court for so many years, and we won that case, and it's in the book of Guinness because it's the biggest money case that.
At 83 years old, Ronald Isley is finally breaking his silence, and what he's confirming could change how we see the Isley Brothers forever. They were the blueprint, from doo-wop to funk, soul, and quiet storm classics. The Isley Brothers weren't just a group, they were a dynasty. But behind the legacy, behind the fur coats and falsettos, the band was falling apart.
The older guys versus the younger guys, and different financial situations.
Right.
And that's where most of the tension was.
Okay.
I mean, everybody kind of knew where the songs came from.
From legal betrayals to toxic control, drug rumors to wild tour nights, and even a lawsuit that shattered the family name. These are the dark truths the Isley Brothers kept locked away.
Some of the tension was basically about, financial matters.
Okay.
That's when the group ran into problems.
And now, as time runs short and members have passed on, Ronald Isley is finally ready to reveal what really happened. For starters, back in the 1970s and 1980s, Ron Isley was living the kind of life most people only saw in movies. He wasn't just known for his smooth voice or stage presence. Off stage, Ron was living like a full-blown rock star. Think expensive fur coats, flashy limousines, and private jets waiting outside every venue. Wherever Ron went, it felt like a party followed. Groupies would line up just to get near him, and when the night came, it didn't end with the concert. According to people who were there, his hotel parties were wild, champagne everywhere, loud music blasting, and beautiful women lounging in every corner of the suite.
We stay hungry in the business and always wanted to prove something,
It got so intense that tour organizers started booking Ron's hotel rooms on different floors just to keep him and his late-night crowd away from the rest of the band, especially the ones who brought their families on the road. And it wasn't just about the number of women or the alcohol. People close to the Isley Brothers say Ron carried himself like royalty. He always had the finest clothes, the flashiest jewelry, and a kind of confidence that made people take notice. When Ron walked into a room, people paid attention, not just because he was famous, but because he acted like he owned the place. Now, Ron Isley wasn't just known for his music and flashy lifestyle. His private life was just as dramatic. Behind the scenes, things were messy. Word started going around that Ron had fathered several children with different women, and a lot of it was kept quiet for a reason. Back in the day, the music industry was all about image. If a broke out, it could ruin careers, especially for someone like Ron, who had built a reputation as a smooth, soulful gentleman. So instead of letting his business hit the tabloids, Ron's team allegedly handled things behind closed doors. People who worked closely with the Isley camp say these quiet payouts weren't unusual. If a woman came forward claiming she was pregnant, or even threatening to expose a relationship, someone from Ron's circle would reach out, usually with a lawyer, and try to settle things fast. And it wasn't always about whether the claims were true. Sometimes it was just about keeping things quiet, avoiding drama, and protecting the brand. Ron was a household name. No one wanted to see headlines about baby mamas and court battles. Even so, those whispers never fully went away. People in the industry talked about how Ron was constantly dealing with paternity scares, one after the other. It became part of the background noise around him. He never spoke publicly about any of it, but if you were in the right rooms, you'd hear the stories. And the women? Some stayed silent, some disappeared from the scene, and others, we may never even know about them. But what's clear is this: Ronald Isley's love life wasn't just wild, it was complicated, and it had real consequences. In the early 1980s, something started to shift with Ron Isley. According to people who were around him back then, musicians, engineers, producers, Ron was acting different. Really different. And while it was never officially confirmed, a lot of folks believed drugs had something to do with it. The word going around was that Ron had started using coke. Now, he was never arrested or caught in the act, so there's no hard proof. But the rumors didn't just come out of nowhere. They were consistent and came from people who were close to him at the time. People who were actually in the studio, working with him day and night. Before all this, Ron had a reputation for being cool, focused, and all about the music. He wasn't just the lead singer. He was a leader, but something in him changed. The confidence turned into control. The calm became chaos. People say he went from being one of the guys to being a total boss, and not the good kind. Instead of working together like brothers, Ron started barking orders and shutting people down. If someone had a different opinion or tried to step up with a new idea, Ron wasn't having it. He'd kill the whole vibe in the room. Recording sessions that were supposed to be collaborative started turning into power trips, and it didn't just affect the vibe. It caused real tension. Some of the Isley brothers felt pushed out. Others just stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Either way, that family feeling they used to have started slipping away. What's wild is, none of this happened overnight. It built up over time, a mix of stress, fame, pressure, and, if the rumors are true, substance use. And once that control switch flipped, things would never be the same for the group. This was the start of an internal war that would last for years, not just over music, but over power, respect, and who really ran the show. Now, it's almost unreal to think that Ronald Isley, the voice behind some of the smoothest and most iconic R&B hits, would end up in such a low place. But that's exactly what happened in the 2000s. Even though he was a legend in the music world, his personal life was falling apart, especially when it came to money. For years, Ron had been dealing with financial problems, but things hit rock bottom when the government stepped in. It turned out that for decades, he hadn't been paying taxes the way he was supposed to. The IRS said he owed over $3 million. They'd already seized some of his property back in the late 90s, including his cars and even a yacht. But that wasn't enough. By 2006, it got so bad that he was sentenced to over 3 years in prison for tax evasion. To make matters worse, Ron wasn't in good shape physically. He had recently suffered a stroke and had gone through kidney cancer. His lawyers tried to argue that prison would be too harsh, especially for a man in his condition. They also pointed out that he was trying to pay off the debt by selling off his assets. But none of that changed the court's decision. They saw him as someone who had avoided paying taxes for a long time and didn't deserve special treatment just because he was famous.
I went in as a king. Everybody there treated me like a king, you know. I sang for the guys. I met my best friend.
But here's what's really heartbreaking. Ron was 65 when he was sentenced. At an age when most people are thinking about retirement and slowing down, he was preparing to serve time behind bars. Even after being discharged from bankruptcy just a few years earlier, he ended up back in trouble for not filing or paying taxes year after year. During all this, he was still making music. He had put out an album with Burt Bacharach and another Isley Brothers project. But none of that was enough to shield him from the consequences of years of mismanagement. Coming off the heels of Ron's prison sentence and money troubles, most people assumed he'd keep a low profile and focus on rebuilding. But instead, he shocked everyone by doing something completely unexpected. He got married. In the mid-2000s, Ronald Isley tied the knot with singer Candy Johnson, a woman 35 years younger than him. The internet couldn't believe it. Social media exploded with reactions, and fans had a field day. People were saying things like, "Ron Isley out here marrying someone who could have been in his daughter's high school class." The jokes were non-stop, but behind all the laughs, there was a serious question on everyone's mind. What exactly was going on here? Candy was already part of the music world. She had been performing with her sister in the group JS, which had been linked to R. Kelly. That's actually how she met Ron, backstage at a concert. From there, things moved fast. They started dating, fell in love, and eventually said, "I do." She even stuck by his side while he served his prison sentence. And after his release, they had a son together. On paper, it looked like a happy ending. Still, not everyone was buying it. With such a huge age gap, and Ron fresh out of jail, dealing with health problems and millions in IRS debt, some people wondered if this was really about love. Was Candy truly in love with the man? Or was she more interested in the legend, the lifestyle, and the legacy? Even more concerning was the family she was stepping into. The Isley Brothers' public image was one of smooth music and success, but behind the scenes, there were long-standing rumors about dysfunction, secrecy, and power struggles. People wondered if Candy really knew what she was signing up for, or if she'd been pulled into something much deeper than expected. To this day, folks are still split. Some say Ron and Candy's relationship is proof that love knows no age. Others think it was a business move, or maybe even a last-ditch attempt to rewrite a troubled chapter. Either way, their marriage added yet another surprising layer to the Isley Brothers' story, one that nobody saw coming, and everyone still has an opinion about. Coming off the heels of Ron's unexpected marriage to a woman half his age, it seemed like the Isley Brothers' story just kept getting more complicated. While fans were still debating whether his relationship with Candy was a true love story or a strategic move, a much older chapter from the family's past was quietly resurfacing, one that still haunts those who were closest to it. Back in 1986, long before the headlines about Ron's marriage or his prison time, the Isley family was rocked by a sudden tragedy. O'Kelly Isley, the quiet yet soulful older brother who had helped shape the sound of the group from the very beginning, died unexpectedly at just 48 years old. The official cause was a heart attack, but to those who knew the family well, that explanation always felt too simple. At the funeral, fans gathered in heartbreak, and tributes poured in from across the music world. But behind the scenes, whispers started to circulate. People who had known O'Kelly personally talked about how the pressure of fame, non-stop touring, and internal family stress may have taken a deeper toll on him than anyone realized. Some believed his death was the result of years of overworking, combined with a lifestyle that wasn't always the healthiest. But others weren't so sure. Certain insiders hinted that something darker might have been going on. They pointed to long-standing tensions between family members, murky business decisions, and an atmosphere where silence was the norm. After O'Kelly's mysterious death in 1986, things inside the Isley family were never quite the same. There was a quiet tension that hung in the air, the kind people didn't talk about but definitely felt. Over time, those unspoken issues seemed to bubble beneath the surface, growing stronger with each passing year. And decades later, those cracks finally burst wide open, right in front of the public eye. In 2023, fans were stunned to learn that Rudolph Isley, O'Kelly's younger brother and longtime bandmate, had filed a lawsuit against Ronald Isley. Yes, his own brother, and not over something small either. Rudolph accused Ron of secretly trying to trademark the Isley brothers' name behind his back, essentially cutting him out of the legacy they built together. Now keep in mind, Rudolph had walked away from the spotlight way back in the late 80s. He turned his focus to religion, stepped back from music, and kept a relatively low profile. But just because he left the stage didn't mean he left the group's history, or what they built, behind. So when he found out that Ronald had filed for sole ownership of the Isley brothers' name, he felt completely blindsided. To Rudolph, this wasn't just a legal issue. It was personal. The name the Isley brothers represented more than just music. It was blood, sweat, tears, and the memory of O'Kelly. It was a name tied to their roots, their pain, and the years of hard work they all put in together. So for Ronald to try and own it by himself felt like a betrayal of everything they'd been through. According to legal documents obtained by TMZ, Rudolph claimed that Ronald had applied for and received approval for the trademark in his own name, keeping all the profits for himself. Rudolph argued that since their brother O'Kelly's passing in 1986, they had always shared profits equally, with both of them holding ownership in the band. More recently, Rudolph alleged that Ronald made decisions on his own without consulting him. He claimed Ronald underhandedly obtained sole ownership of the Isley Brothers trademark and had been receiving all the money since 2021. The court documents revealed that Ronald secured exclusive rights to the Isley Brothers trademark for visual and audiovisual recordings, featuring music and animation in August. Rudolph insisted Ronald should have sought his approval for this deal. He also pointed out that Ronald filed the trademark application in his own name in November 2021, despite their previous joint profit-sharing arrangements, such as a multi-million-dollar publishing deal. As a result, Rudolph asked the court to order a financial audit to determine how much Ronald had earned since making these changes. Perhaps Rudolph was hearing footsteps in the dark, prompting him to take such actions against his brother. Rudolph also wanted the court to officially declare that the Isley Brothers trademark is jointly owned by both brothers and that Ronald should share half of the earnings made from using the band's name since acquiring the trademark. Legal analysts were quick to say this case wasn't really about money. It was about something much deeper. It exposed just how broken things had gotten within the Isley family. The brothers who had once sung harmonies side by side were now sitting across from each other in courtrooms. Even sadder, the case was never fully resolved. Rudolph passed away later that same year in 2023. And just like with O'Kelly's death, it left a trail of unanswered questions and unfinished business behind. Looking back now, some fans believe this lawsuit was the final sign that something had been fractured in the Isley family for a very long time. After the painful fallout between Ronald and Rudolph, many fans began to look back at the other members who helped build the Isley Brothers' legacy, and few stood out more than Ernie Isley. Ernie wasn't just another guy in the background. He was the genius behind the guitar solos on classics like That Lady and Summer Breeze.
This is a Zeal Stratocaster. It's a Fender guitar with, but it's a Zeal Stratocaster. It's my design, Z-E-A-L, Zeal. There's a hummingbird next to the Z.
His skills gave the Isley Brothers their rock-soul fusion sound that set them apart from everyone else. And yet, despite his talent, Ernie never got the flowers he truly deserved. According to insiders, Ernie was often treated like a side player, even though his contributions were central to the group's success. While Ronald was seen as the face of the group, Ernie was the engine. He played, wrote, arranged, and even sang. But the spotlight rarely landed on him. Chris Jasper, who worked closely with Ernie, once said, "Ernie was the sound." But people only saw Ron. And that quote stuck with fans because it said a lot about what was really going on behind the scenes. The tension wasn't always loud, but it was there. Ronald was slowly taking more and more control, and Ernie, despite his brilliance, was often overshadowed. And while Ernie was fighting to be seen, Marvin Isley, the youngest of the brothers and the man behind that unforgettable bass line in Between the Sheets, was quietly fading from the spotlight. In the 2000s, fans began to notice that Marvin had disappeared from public view. There weren't many updates, no solo projects, no interviews, just silence. But the truth behind that silence was heartbreaking. Marvin was battling severe complications from diabetes, which had taken both of his legs. He kept much of his struggle private, not wanting pity or to be seen as weak. But those closest to him knew he was suffering deeply. He died in 2010 at just 56 years old. A family friend later shared, "He was hurting, but pride kept him from sharing that pain." And in many ways, that quote sums up not just Marvin, but the Isley family as a whole, a family that always seemed to suffer in silence. Around the same time Marvin began pulling back, another key member had already walked away. Chris Jasper, the group's keyboardist, producer, and brother-in-law, had left the group in the mid-1980s. At the time, not much was said about his exit, but years later, Chris began to speak out. He revealed that behind all the hits and fame, there was a constant tug-of-war for credit and control.
I was really involved. I was involved in the mixing, the mastering, all the way down to the end. And if you listen to just that period of time, you're going to hear everything.
His comments brought a deeper issue to light, the growing divide between the original members and the newer additions. Chris, Ernie, and Marvin had brought new energy to the group in the 70s. But Ronald, being the eldest and the most recognizable, was often the one taking credit and making executive decisions. Chris's departure wasn't just about music, it was about respect, and his words helped confirm what fans had started to suspect. Ronald wasn't just leading the group, he was running it. By the 2000s, Ronald was the last man standing at the front of the Isley Brothers' legacy, and that's when he made one of his boldest and most controversial moves, partnering with R. Kelly. Songs like Down Low and Contagious gave Ronald a whole new generation of fans.
Nobody has to know.
The music was catchy, sexy, and soulful, but it came at a cost. Even back then, there were whispers about R. Kelly's behavior, and once those allegations exploded in the public eye, people began questioning why Ronald ever aligned himself with him. Apparently, there were members who hated that collab, but no one dared challenge Ron. And that's really the theme that kept repeating itself. Ronald had the final say. No matter how talented the others were, or how questionable the decisions got, no one challenged the man in charge. In the end, the story of the Isley Brothers wasn't just about music, it was about family. A family that became a brand, and then a business, and eventually a battlefield. From O'Kelly's sudden death to Rudolph's unresolved lawsuit, from Ernie and Marvin's overlooked pain to Chris Jasper's quiet exit, the pattern was clear. Everyone was either pushed out, walked away, or buried. And through it all, Ronald remained, older, wiser, but still at the center of it all. The Isley Brothers weren't just a band. They were a family, torn apart by control, ego, and silence. That name, the Isley Brothers, is now owned by one man. The others are gone, some bitter, some silent, some buried. What remains is a legacy, stained by betrayal. At 83, Ron Isley finally opened the vault, and now we know the brotherhood was never perfect, but the music, that was always real. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.